think about what you put in that blank a couple minutes ago. Great teachers, what? I imagine that not too many of us in this room wrote down that great teachers are the smartest person in the world or know everything there is to know about their subject. The 4 points we talked about, to me, are really important. Celebrating mistakes, appreciating those differences, relaying that feedback, and evaluating yourself. I think the bottom line is really that great teachers just care, right? That's what they do. Yeah. Thanks. And that, I'll tell you, that is the coolest part of my job. I get to act like me, just like tonight with these animals, which is apparently unheard of for this TED Talk stuff, to have animals involved. This is me. This is Ranger Nick, you know? And to be able to do this stuff and empower and inspire folks with great teaching, it's incredible. Ranger Bill, 31 years ago, 45 minutes he spent with me. That set me on a path that I'm standing here tonight talking to you about. I've never, ever wanted to do anything else in my life but this. Tell you about animals and nature and inspire you by being me. It's empowering. I want you to leave tonight and think about the difference that you can make. My title is an educator. You know, that's what I do. I'm an educator. But even though most of us in here might not be educators, every one of you is a teacher, right? So the next time you've got 45 minutes with somebody or even 4 minutes with somebody, what are you going to do to show them that you care? I think that Maya Angelou said it best. She said, people will forget what you said. People are going to forget what you did. But they're not going to forget how you made them feel. I hope this made you smile tonight. I really appreciate you listening to me. Thank y'all so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
22 years ago, I was offered a job as an assistant professor at a university in the state of Michigan. It was late summer and I had a few weeks to go before I start teaching. I was excited and terrified. Excited because I always wanted to teach and I got the job. Terrified because I was not sure if I had the knowledge, language, and communication skills to teach. I wasn't too worried about the knowledge because I know students did not know that material, and that they don't know that I don't know the material either. So that was okay. English was my third language, and I was not fluent. And I had an accent on top of that. I still have an accent. So I wasn't sure if the students would understand me. If I had a British accent, I would have kept it. Anyhow, I was also worried about my language skills and communication skills. See, when I talk about communication skills with students, I was terrified to be with them talking about skills that I didn't have. So I was so terrified, I was sitting that summer at home thinking, my God, I made a mistake. I should have continued myself to be an engineer. Why would I quit my job and become a professor? I was depressed. I was watching a movie with my daughters, a Disney movie. Suddenly, I had a moment of revelation. I ran to my bathroom, stood in front of the mirror, and said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall, how can I be a better teacher in the fall?" And I waited. The mirror didn't answer me. Then I got a phone call from the department chair who hired me. And I understood from him how the teaching system works. Basically, it works like this. You are a new teacher. Your department chair or the school principal will give you a piece of paper called curriculum or syllabus, and it has a list of topics that you are supposed to cover. And you are expected to cover those topics in certain amount of time, such as one semester. That's it. You don't have to do anything other than to follow those topics. What is expected from you is to give quizzes and exams, so it's harder for the students. How you teach, how much of a topic you cover, how less you cover, how fast you cover, doesn't matter. It's all up to you. That's how the teaching works. And that's interesting. So I got this syllabus, and I am ready to go and teach. And in traditional teaching, that's all. You go and lecture in the classrooms. So I am all ready. I am going to go to teach the students, and I prepared in the traditional way. And I prepared hard exams. Exams are hard and unrealistic. In fact, it was so hard and unrealistic, I have no doubt Isaac Newton would fail the calculus class in a high school. By the way, Isaac Newton invented calculus. Now, can you imagine Isaac Newton with his long hair sitting in the back row in somebody's calculus class? And that teacher is teaching calculus with PowerPoint. Isaac, don't fall asleep. What's wrong with you? Don't you know calculus is a tough subject? Pay attention, otherwise you will fail AP Calculus. That's what we are doing to our students today. Isaac Newtons and Galileos won't pass our classes anymore. It's so tough, unrealistic. Anyhow, I go to my class, I teach my students, and I prepared hard, I work hard. So my lectures come out all right, my students like me, I get good student evaluation, and I would have stayed there. But I felt something is missing. Something that students are not learning. I mean, they are doing better, but I don't feel they're connected. There is some kind of a disconnect. Then I came across a quote by Phyllis Diller, who was a stand-up comedian. You know, we learn from comedians a lot. And her quote goes something like this. In the first 12 months, we teach our kids to walk and talk. And then we tell them, sit down and shut up. Aha. So our students, I prepare my lectures and deliver all these lectures, and I'm very excited about it, but the students are not responding, not learning enough. They are not involved, they are not engaged. So I realized there's something I got to do. So I start out my journey of figuring out a way to engage students. I came up with a few things, all right? So I'm going to share them with. The first thing is, be original. Why? Well, I have 23 years of education in 4 different countries in 3 continents, and I have hundreds of teachers. And I found one common thing among all bad teachers. All bad teachers are boring. It doesn't matter. They come from different cultural backgrounds, they have different styles, but they're all boring. They live in their own world. They communicate to themselves. In other words, they talk to themselves. They don't communicate with the students. And that wasn't exciting. Then I looked at all the good teachers. I read books about teaching. I listened to great teachers about teaching. I watched even movies. Then I saw all great teachers that I liked are very different. They spoke different languages. Some of them spoke very loudly. Some of them were soft-spoken. Some of them were very humorous. Some of them were serious. Some of them were moving around a lot, and some of them were standing still. In fact, I loved a teacher in Russia who would stand still and talk softly, but he would tell stories that we would be on the edge of our seat to listen to him. Such an engaging speaker, but he wasn't loud, he was standing still. I thought that's a fantastic way to teach, so I tried that out in my class. In 15 minutes, it was a disaster. Because I am not him, I got to move around, I got to be loud. So I realized the good thing about good teaching is you be original. Don't copy anybody else. And that's easy. That means all you have to be is be yourself. So that's the first lesson I learned. Be yourself. Be original. And then the second important thing it occurred to me over a period of time of teaching is renounce teaching. Now, I'm not kidding. It sounds silly and ridiculous. Renounce teaching. Why? Because teaching is not learning. Think about it. Renounce teaching means you are recognizing the fact teaching is not learning. First, let's talk about this. Teaching is about teachers. Learning is about students. In traditional teaching, teaching is like teachers giving a cup of water to the students, and learning is like students drinking that cup of water entirely. That sounds more like a treatment than learning to me. Now, if that worked, 100% of the knowledge has been transferred to the student, then everybody would be a student. And that doesn't work. That means teaching is not a process of information transfer like transferring through a high-speed USB drive. It's not like we can download something into our brain very quickly, like in a movie like Matrix, and learn to fly a helicopter. It's not. Second, learning occurs independent of teaching. In fact, learning can occur independent of teaching without teacher. Think about kids walking. Do we go and tell a kid 8 months old, listen, I am going to tell you some pointers on how to walk. Don't start the step. Now, we don't do that. Learning occurs without, and that's true for all essential life skills, whether walking, talking, eating. They learn by trial and error, experimenting. We can support them, we can help them, but learning occurs without teaching. And the third important part of understanding why teaching is not learning is your own beliefs. Our personal beliefs control our actions, right? Religious beliefs or any other beliefs control our action. If you think you are supposed to teach, then the focus is on you. So what you are going to do is to focus on your presentation, on your lecture, on your exams, on your methods, on your glory. Student learning doesn't even make that list. So the idea of teaching is not helping to learn. So it is very important you renounce teaching. It's in a sense like Alcohol Anonymous. If you are an alcoholic and if you want to become sober, what do? First acknowledge you are an alcoholic. So first acknowledge teaching is not learning. And once you recognize that, you can move on to the next step of how you can help students to learn. And that would be getting to their eye level. It's very easy to understand. We have to get to the eye level of students. How do you do that? Well, we do that in our everyday life. Think about it. You have a child. You want to communicate with the child. You want to tell a story maybe. You want to read a book, or you want to sing a song. What do? You get on your knees so you can be at their eye level. Or you carry them so you can be at their eye level. That's how the communication takes place, not from the podium to the students. So get onto their eye level in our context means understanding the subject matter from students' perspective. And the student's perspective is very simple. Quite often, they don't understand why I am learning this. Is there a real meaning behind it? Or is it just to make their life harder? Or what is the real application? Why can't we upfront and tell that? So getting to their eye level is an important next step. All right? One way to practice that is, I always practice these days, is to ensure you can explain any difficult concept to a fifth grader. Trust me, any concept, whether it is thermodynamics or nuclear engineering, can be explained to a fifth grader in simple terms in a broad way. So if you understand the subject matter, you can explain to a fifth grader. Today, I practice this. Before I teach my first year, second year engineering classes, I try these concepts in fifth grade, eighth grade, or high school, because I'm part of an outreach program. And if you can explain to a fifth grader, that means you are communicating the concept in a simple language without technical jargon. So students, if there are any here, next time, if your professor says something and you don't understand, ask them to explain again. If they can't explain you in a different way or in a simpler way, trust me, they don't understand the subject themselves. You are better off leaving them alone and go use Google or Wikipedia. All right? The next important aspect of teaching or learning is to help students to make mistakes. Now, this is something well written. Researchers have done that. Without making mistakes, you cannot learn. But we don't let them make mistakes. We grade them poorly. Here's my analogy. If you don't make small mistakes and understand the consequences in a controlled environment in your classroom, you are going to make big blunders in life later. That's number one. Number two, if you avoid those blunders, then you are not going to take any initiative. You're never going to make any important decisions in life. And that's why making mistakes is so important. To do that, you can keep your classrooms like a basketball or a soccer practice sessions. You work hard, you understand your mistakes, you exercise, you fix your mistakes, you develop strategy, you work with your teammates, so you prepare for a final game. But what is happening in our classrooms is every class session is becoming like a final game. And that's stressful, all right? So you have to let them make mistakes. Now, once you can do that, the next most important point in my approach for teaching or helping students learn is to completely avoid the term, what we call don't reinvent the wheel. How many times you hear, don't reinvent the wheel, don't reinvent the wheel? This is by far the most counterproductive statement ever there is. If you want students to learn, help them reinvent the wheel. Every student must reinvent the wheel in their mind. How can you understand something without experiencing? If you want to learn to ride a bike, it's not a big deal. Everybody rides a bike. But still, balancing the bike is an individual action. You got to experience it. Nobody can substitute that for you. So you have to create that experience for students. All right? So reinvent the wheel means you have to reinvent Newton's law in your mind. Otherwise, it is just an equation that you memorize without any understanding. In fact, I have absolutely no shame in admitting, in first grade, I did not believe the earth is round. Because it didn't make any sense. How do you know the earth is round? Now you have pictures in the last 20, 30 years from satellites and all that. When I went to school, I didn't have even TV. We didn't know. So I secretly harbored this notion that the earth is flat, but I would answer always, it's round, because that's what I was told. And many students are doing this in engineering and every discipline. They don't believe, they do not understand, but they answer the questions. So if you want to change that, you have to provide them that experience. How do you provide? One simple way to do that. Simple question. What do you think? This one simple question I stumbled on once, and I still use it. In 3rd grade, 5th grade, high school, graduate school, I use it successfully. Ask the students, what do you think? Any questions? You never answered. Most of the time I did this because I didn't know the answer. I know it. I was teaching a 3rd grade group of students robotics. This little girl comes to me and says, Dr. Java, my robot is not working. I say, what do you think? She thinks for a second and looks at me and says, Dr. Java, I think my wires are not properly plugged in, connected. I said, okay. She tries it out a few minutes later. Dr. Java, my robot is still not working. I say, what do you think? And she says, maybe my battery is not working. I said, okay. Now, this is interesting. I thought she would just look at the battery level and say, it has enough. She looked at it. It had, 1 bar or 2 bars. Not enough, I feel. But she says, let me check. And then she grabs another robot, changes the battery, and finds the other robot is working. So she says, Dr. Java, the battery is fine. I didn't even think of that solution, but she's figuring out. I was thinking about teaching now how to use a multimeter to a 3rd grader because she's ready. She's ready. The point is we went through these interactions a few times and she realized there is no problem with the hardware. So finally it occurred to her, Dr. Chava, it has to be my program. Okay. I didn't do anything. She thanked me for helping her to solve the problem. All I did is, what do you think? I have done hundreds of these exercises in different classes just with the simple question, what do you think? It makes my life easier. And it makes them to think, and they are discovering themselves what should be done. What a great joy of discovery for them, and less work for professors, right? So what do you think is an outstanding way to help our students? And the last part of reinventing the wheel is, I tell the students, don't take the students on a bus ride. This is from an educator called Jay Cross. We always take our students on a bus ride. That means I am the driver, professor. I control where the bus goes. I control its speed. I stop where I want, and the students are watching. It may be fun for a few minutes, but they're going to fall asleep. What I feel is we got to take our students on a bike ride. Now, if you are on a bike ride, you cannot fall asleep. And you can stop anywhere you want. And you can make some digressions and learn more. And teacher becomes an active participant with the students. So you got to design your curriculum, design your activity for a bike tour. That involves all the students. If you do all this, you are going to engage the students. And when you engage the students, they learn automatically. That's what I have learned. So my final thought is, in my opinion, real learning occurs when you immerse the learner in a situation, allow them to perform, give them feedback to change or adjust their behavior. And that's how the real learning occurs. And our job as educators is to create those situations. Thank you.
जो वीडियो नंबर 2 है उसमें रेंजर निक ने एक रेंजर से एक आदमी से 45 मिनट का एक लेक्चर सुना था जब वो छोटा था, जिसने उसको इंस्पायर किया। उसने जानवरों के बारे में मालूमात दी थी, उससे इंस्पायर होके वो एनिमल साइंटिस्ट बन गया, बहुत बड़ा ज़ूलॉजिस्ट बन गया दुनिया के हाई लेवल का, और उसकी ज़िंदगी बदल गई। तो आपने वो भी देखा, आपने वो भी देखा कि किस तरह एक बच्चा जो कि ड्रग्स पे था, लेकिन उसके टीचर्स ने जिस तरह उसको मेंटोर किया और उसके अंदर कॉन्फिडेंस शो किया, उससे उसकी ज़िंदगी चेंज हो गई।
I have one of the best jobs in the world because I get to work with people who are fun, funny, energetic, creative, and insightful. And they happen to be 14 to 18 years of age. I really do think kids keep a person young. And I think that's probably why when I'm in the presence of adults, I sometimes don't know how to act, so you'll forgive me. So, inspiring the students of the future. What really works? 37 years of teaching experience have taught me that two things are needed: research-based teaching techniques and relationship. Relationship is huge, but we'll talk more about that later. What I'd like to look at first are the techniques. I think probably most of us remember the teacher-centered classroom. This is probably what we're familiar with from our youth. You remember the teacher was up front and center. The students were in nice, neat rows, not allowed to talk to each other. And the teacher, the source of authority, downloaded information to the kids who regurgitated it back up on a test designed to measure how much content they could remember. Now, I have to admit, I love lecturing, but my students don't always love it. It does not always inspire. So I was thinking, what really inspires? Years ago, I was doing lunch duty at school, standing in the lunchroom, being visible, watching kids go through the cafeteria line. And as I watched the kids going through the line, it occurred to me, they love having choices. And so I said to myself, maybe that would work in the classroom. Let the kids have choices. And so that's what I did. I converted my classroom to a situation where student choice was a big part of the room, along with 4 other C's: collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and creativity. Actually, over 10 years ago, the National Education Association identified those last 4 C's on the list as essential 21st century skills that kids should learn, and I agree wholeheartedly. I've added choice to the top of the list, not as a skill for kids to learn, but rather as a characteristic of the classroom. By choice, I mean a situation where many learning activities are available to students, designed to meet the many diverse learning styles that they have. And the kids love it as much as they love choices in the cafeteria. Now, I think we're made for learning this way. Imagine our early hominid ancestors out looking for food. Don't you know that finding and tracking that woolly mammoth required critical thinking and problem solving? It definitely required collaboration, teamwork. I mean, you wouldn't want to do this by yourself. No way. And collaboration required communication. And then I imagine those people sitting around the campfire at night, reliving the adventures of the day's hunt. They must have had smiles on their faces when they were retelling the story of the hunt. And I know they smiled when they put those cave paintings up on the wall, because creativity is a uniquely human, pleasurable, satisfying activity. So I believe our brains are wired for the 5 C's. And since they're wired for the 5 C's, that authentic learning will happen when kids are allowed to engage in the 5 C's. And not just learning, but I think kids will enjoy a classroom setup like this and even be inspired in this way. Now, this requires a classroom setup based on the 5 C's requires a shift from a teacher-centered classroom to a student-centered classroom. And this requires the teacher to remove him or herself from front and center, becoming more of a guide on the side rather than a sage on the stage. But this opens up opportunities to not merely teach, but to coach, to mentor, to nurture, and inspire. And that's why I love it so much. Now, time out. It's important for me to mention these are not my original ideas. I stand on the shoulders of giants. Remember Plutarch? He said it a long time ago. The mind is not a vessel that needs filling, but wood that needs igniting. And more recently, Albert Einstein. Education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. All right, you're going to have to bear with me. I'm going to get real goosebumply for a minute. One of the absolute most exciting moments of my life, my professional life, was meeting Albert Einstein just a few years ago. Changed my life bumping into him in that wax museum. What a moment it was. So I stand on the shoulders of giants. Giants like Montessori and Piaget. And Dr. Sam Postlethwaite, who was doing a lot of these things in his biology classes at Purdue University back in the 1960s. I'm a product of the Purdue Biology Department. That's where I fell in love with biology. I stand on the shoulders of giants like Tom Watts and Steve Randack, who were doing this back in the 1970s in their high school biology classes. I stand on the shoulders of many giants called elementary school teachers and special ed teachers. So I'm a product of all of those mentors. So collaboration, communication, critical thinking, creativity, and student choice. What's it look like? If I could just share with you briefly the experiences that I've tried with this. I've taken my 9th grade biology classes and divided the school year up into 2 to 3 week units. At the beginning of each unit, the students are given a menu of all the smorgasbord activities that are available on the menu. Now, this has been challenging because I've had to write all of these activities so that no matter what combination of activities a student chooses to do based on their learning styles, and no matter what order they choose to do them in, they'll still achieve the required objectives for the unit. It's been fun. It's been a challenge.